my next guest, I'm going to give you a little bit of heads up in terms of who this next gentleman is, and also admit that I am coming to this interview, I think, with the freshest eyes that he's probably faced in a while. And that is to say, I was an instant fan when I found out about what this man has done, but I wanted to have him on so that I could ask the real straightforward, simple questions, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do this show, which is to not only meet people that I admired as well as have people on that I've worked with, but when I meet people and they know me from movies or what have you, they all want to know really the hardships and how you got from there to here, and then they want to hear about your project. So I think that's where we're going to start today, and I'm going to now welcome the founder and CEO of Tesla Motors as well as SpaceX. I hope I pronounced those correctly.
Yes, absolutely.
And Elon Musk is also?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, first of all.
You're welcome.
For joining us here. And I also have to thank you profusely for not bolting out the door after watching the last 4 minutes of my show.
It was difficult.
It must have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's very different worlds. Yeah. And I'm sure that there was a moment, at least a moment, one in your mind that said, oh my God.
What am I doing here?
What have I gotten myself into? Well, here's the thing. These interviews, have you been on Charlie Rose yet?
No, but I will be, I think, later this month or early next.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I certainly watched the show.
Yeah. As a viewer, you understand that one of the wonderful things about his show that I'm trying so desperately to emulate blatantly is actual conversations.
Yeah.
Throughout my career, I've been fortunate enough to do almost every talk show that's existed for the last 20 years, starting with Johnny Carson and Larry King and all of them. And they're all about little sound bites, and they're all about little quick anecdotes, in my case with punchlines and characters. Rarely is there an opportunity to have an actual conversation and to find out more details about what it is that drives you to do what you do.
Sure.
And got you to the place that you're at today. So thank you very much for everything you're about to share. We've got twitter.com asking questions live. We've got folks actually very excited to ask questions. I'm going to start pretty much with reading a lot about you in preparation. All that stuff is, Wikipedia and various sites to find out one's history.
Yeah.
How old were you?
It's all hit or miss.
I know, it's all hit or miss. I find it to be that way.
Yeah.
How old were you, if I may, let's just start here, when the first vision popped into your head about working and bringing an electric car to the consumer?
Well, I've been interested in electric cars for a long time. Actually, I used to think about it quite a bit in college.
Right.
So it's been probably 17, 18 years that I've been thinking about the area. In fact, I used to talk to my dates in college about the importance of electric cars.
And how did that work out for you?
Not well. It's not a great date conversation.
No?
No. In fact, I ran into someone who I had briefly dated in college, and she brought this up. She's a writer for Scientific American these days, and had come to do an interview with me and actually mentioned that it was a memorable date. Not necessarily in a good way.
Right.
Yeah.
One she would never forget.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm kind of a science and engineering guy, so for me it's been obvious for a while that the future, we have to figure out a way to get off oil, and that the solution is electric cars.
Right.
The advantage of an electric car is that you can generate that electricity by renewable means.
Right.
And so if you consume the electricity, if you're running electric cars and then you're generating your power with solar, wind,
right.
geothermal, which is increasing dramatically, by the way.
It sure is.
And if you're doing that, then you have a sustainable solution for the future.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're burning oil, that's something that's going to end sooner or later. And so it's better to do it sooner and avoid the environmental damage than later, and have the environmental damage plus a massive wealth transfer from the United States to other countries.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of it too. Is how do we take back control of our destiny, quite frankly.
Right.
And so this idea came to you 17, 18 years ago. I think it was around that time that, for the most part, those who were starting to hear rumblings of an electric car, myself included, were thinking, whoever puts out a gorgeous as well as functional electric car wins.
Sure.
In terms of exciting first a few and then the masses eventually, with as the prices become more affordable to all consumers. Initially, what people are praising and also damning, you know, there's both sides of it. Initially, you started with the Roadster.
Right.
The Tesla Roadster, which is a huge success.
It has been very successful, yeah.
How, just walk us through, if you wouldn't mind, the chronological pieces of business here, because this really is fascinating to a great many of us. From conception to rolling out that first model, just in terms of a brief history of I can't imagine the hardships that took place in trying to get this thing to come to fruition.
Yeah, it's certainly been technically quite difficult,
right.
From a business standpoint quite difficult, and then it's been overlaid with a bit of a sort of soap opera from a personnel standpoint. So
please feel free to share all of that.
Yeah.
Whatever you're comfortable sharing, we'd love to hear. Whatever you can legally share.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll try to actually, I'll focus on the non-personnel elements.
Fair enough.
And because I think that's more pertinent for the future. So in terms of, you know, where do we come from, where are we headed, and that kind of thing. So
right.
in starting a car company, it's obviously a high capital endeavor.
Yes.
And particularly when you're talking about something which is a brand new technology.
Right.
And no one had really gotten all the pieces to work together quite right for, you know, to create a compelling product as far as electric cars are concerned.
There's a couple of people who tried, and
yeah,
a couple of companies that came and went.
Well, and some of those companies are sort of still here today. Like, you know, General Motors had the EV1.
Right.
And actually, if they'd continued and produced the EV2, EV3, and continued that development, there probably wouldn't have been a need for Tesla. But they didn't. Unfortunately, they took those cars away from people forcibly and crushed them.
Literally.
People literally crushed them.
Yeah.
And if people have seen Chris Payne's movie "Who Killed the Electric Car," which I recommend,
yes.
you can see some of that. You know, it's amazing that the people who Jim gave those EV1s to held a candlelit vigil for the cars getting crushed. I mean,
yeah.
Can you imagine anyone holding a candlelit vigil for a GM car?
No, I really can't.
Or any product.
Or any product is the point.
Why would you would you discontinue a product line with that level of customer interest?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and so it's pretty well documented in that film. Okay,
right.
so...
But I'll give you the chronology,
sure.
You know, sort of, and the reasoning, why did we start with the car that we started with? Because I do get asked the question, why are you making this expensive sports car? You know, with implying that we somehow think there's a shortage of sports cars in the world, or rich people really need a break, or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's absurd if you think of it. But nonetheless, people are confused. Like, why can't you make an affordable car?
I wanted to give you the opportunity to explain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and there are two reasons. One is that when you have a brand new technology, it tends to be expensive. I mean, it's almost always expensive, in fact, because the first thing you're trying to do is to make it work.
Yeah. And
if you're just trying to make it work, you don't have an opportunity to optimize the cost.
Right.
Okay. And if you think about anything new, when cell phones first came out, they were very expensive. Personal computers were very expensive.
Oh boy.
Even gasoline engine cars in the beginning were very, very expensive. Can only be afforded by a few people.
Absolutely.
So.
Who doesn't remember the $1,400 VCR? I mean,
right, absolutely.
It's part of our...
In fact, you can point at almost anything new.
Innovation.
It starts off expensive.
Yeah.
Because the first thing you're trying to do is make it work.
Yeah. And cell phones the size of a shoebox.
Yeah, absolutely.
$1,800.
I remember Wall Street with the guy walking around with that shoebox phone, basically. So any new technology is expensive.
Right.
And then the other factor is economies of scale. So in order to make something inexpensive, you have to make a lot of it. But to put together a factory that can make hundreds of thousands of cars costs, $1 billion or more. So.
And who's going to take a chance?
Right. And the thing is, it would still be silly to try to do that economies of scale thing on the first iteration of the technology because it's still going to be expensive.
Yeah.
And this is a problem that GM is starting to see with the Volt.
Right.
Is they're having trouble bringing the cost of that car below $40,000. And that's problematic when you're talking about a car that is essentially intended to compete against gasoline cars that are in the $25,000 to $30,000 range.
Right.
It's very important that an electric car be of comparable price to other cars of its type. So the Tesla Roadster is actually about the same price as a Porsche. So it's
many cases less.
Yeah, in fact, less than a Porsche Turbo.
Right.
So anyway, so that's basically the reason. It was the first generation of the technology, and we were necessarily at low volume because we didn't have the capital to go to high volume manufacturing.
Yeah, and you weren't making an inexpensive sports car. You were making a brand new state-of-the-art sports car. That was some of the negativity that I didn't understand, because it didn't seem to come from naive people. It seemed to come from people who seemed very scholared in their particular areas of expertise, who completely missed the obvious justification in terms of what kind of vehicle you were actually making from the ground up, and it being the first of its kind. I'm astounded by.
Well, a common misperception is that because for the Roadster, we worked with Lotus,
right,
and we did initially intend to use a modified Lotus Elise chassis for our car. People think, oh, it's just a modified Lotus, but actually we had to redesign almost every part of the car.
Sure.
And our initial thought of, well, we can just use a Lotus Elise chassis turned out not to be true because the weight distribution is all different, the load points are all different. Our car ended up being 30% heavier. We had to redesign almost everything. In fact, there's only 7% parts commonality between our car and an Elise.
7%?
7%. In fact,
and those are the letters. First of all, there's 5 letters in Lotus. So that's a bit of the 7% right there.
Well, there's no Lotus. Actually, there's not any Lotus logos on the car.
No,
but
of course not.
But nonetheless, it is. So 7% parts commonality is actually that means when somebody like GM or Ford announces an all-new car, that all-new car has more than 7% commonality with prior cars.
Excellent point.
So in other words, this is a newer new car than most new cars.
Yeah.
Almost all new cars. Right. So it was tricky to bring it in for the price that we did bring it in. In fact, there was some pretty big mistakes made initially on the estimates of cost, and that forced us to raise the price later in order not to be shipping product at a loss.
What's the time frame from the first sort of breaking ground on the space where you're going to manufacture this car? Obviously a prototype to begin with.
The sedan or you mean the sedan? No, the Roadster's in production.
Right. But
how long did it take?
Yeah, but I mean, they're on the road now.
Yes. In fact, we've delivered over 300 cars.
And so
approaching 400 cars. Yeah.
And when was the first one delivered? The Roadster?
The first production car was delivered in February of last year, and that was my car. But it was, I mean, the initial production rate was about one every three to 4 weeks.
Wow.
And then it's got up to 2 every 3 to 4 weeks, then 4, and now we're at the point where we're about 20 to 25 per week.
Okay. And wow. And now, at what point during the Roadster building process does the S model begin its drawing boards? Almost immediately?
Well, we've been working on the Model S for about 2 years if you take the sort of early conceptual stuff into account.
So you really obviously have to focus everything on the Roadster first, get it up and running, and then, but in the back of your mind, the master plan is the Model S?
Yeah, the basic plan of action, the master plan was and is to produce an expensive car in low volume, then a lower cost car in kind of medium cost car in medium volume, and then a low cost car in high volume. And that's the plan. That was my plan from the beginning, and that remains the plan today. And we've been able to accelerate that the low cost car a little bit by working with Daimler, the maker of Mercedes and Smart, to create an electric smart car.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's the third phase after the
Model S? I think we'll probably still do a third generation platform of our own.
Right.
but as a means of accelerating low-cost vehicle access, we're working with companies like Daimler to get there sooner. So my understanding is Daimler is planning to have the beginning of that 1,000-car test fleet on the roads towards the end of this year.
So you're already focusing on working with an existing manufacturer in terms of bringing the electric car to a larger consumer base.
Yeah, really the overarching point of Tesla is to accelerate the electric car revolution, and that's going to be a combination of cars we produce and cars that we help other companies produce. In fact, we've been trying to sell our technology to Detroit and to other car companies in other parts of the world for a couple of years now, and it's ironic that really the first company to do that is not an American company, but it's a German company, Daimler. In fact, Daimler was the one that invented the internal combustion engine car. So, you know, they're the oldest car company in the world, and they're actually being...
And here they are jumping in with the electric car, full force. As we move into your describing the Model S and its conception, we have some photos that we can throw up and let people look at while you're talking about it. Because I got to be honest, when I saw the Roadster, I was wildly impressed, but I was waiting. I was waiting for a non-sports car, more of a sedan.
Right.
Which is what...
And most people were, in fact.
Yeah. And I do feel like the larger audience is already chomping at the bit. And when I saw this car, I flipped out. I just could not believe something like this had been achieved when I wasn't looking. Because you did an awfully good job keeping it under wraps all these months, if not... first prototype was completed...
Yeah, well, the first prototype was just completed last month when we... And that's when we did the unveiling of the Model S, the first drivable prototype. We've been working on the Model S in earnest for about a little over a year.
A little over a year.
Yeah.
So you're saying only a week or so before you unveiled it on March 26th, was it? March 26th?
Yeah, March 26th, yeah.
Only a week before, was it actually fully functioning and ready to be driven?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Because that sort of thing happens
really
in
down
my
to the wire.
business. Yeah, not fantastic for you.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, I don't understand how you have any hair left after that sort of nail biter. In my business, that sort of thing happens all the time.
Yeah.
People rushing to get their film ready for the Sundance Film Festival. I've seen big studio films that are still polishing and doing last-minute special effects adjustments way after they've announced the release date and rushing it into theaters. And oh my goodness, I can't even imagine the sort of pressure involved. So we've been looking at some pictures, yeah? Wonderful. We're still looking at them? Great. Because this car is so gorgeous. Okay, I'm gonna get a little selfish here, and also lean this towards people like myself who have the next series of questions, which are: when will this car be available to me, and what is the process for me to sign up and get one now?
Well, the car will be available in 2 years, which is that's when we'll be finished with all the crash testing and all the regulatory stuff and have built out the factory, because this is a true mass production car. In fact, the Model S will be the first mass production electric vehicle, true car that highway capable.
What numbers
type of car.
of
not a golf cart type of thing.
What numbers of mass production are we talking about?
We're talking about 20,000 a year. And
so when you unveil, you want to have 20,000 ready.
Well, we'll still be
over a year's time. You'll roll them out.
It'll take a little bit of time to spool up the production line, but these will be mass manufactured cars where robots are doing things as opposed to hand-built cars, because the Roadster is really a hand-built car.
Right.
And
you got robots building the model.
A lot of it, yeah.
Now, I've heard everything from the third quarter of 2010 to the beginning of 2012. What's realistic for the Model S?
Well, our aspiration is to have the first production cars available in the third quarter of 2011. So just over 2 years from now.
Right.
And I think it's achievable. And I think there's much less technology risk and uncertainty than there was with the Roadster.
Right.
So I do feel reasonably confident that we can meet that date. Of course, it is dependent on when the Department of Energy disperses funds for the loan program that they have. There's something called the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program,
Yes.
which was actually put into effect by Congress last year, and then the DOE is just on the verge of awarding those loan programs. It's intended to provide a lower cost of capital to companies that are developing energy efficient cars.
Well, it couldn't make more sense to those of us who've been waiting for this to happen, so we're
Right.
glad that they're going to pitch in. There's also going to be a $7,500 rebate to...
There is already a $7,500 rebate that's as of January 1st.
Right.
So it's a tax rebate, applies to anyone, regardless of your tax situation.
And the first base price is $49,900, and it goes up from there depending on the
Yes.
size of the battery?
Yes, the base price of the Model S is $49,900.
Right.
And that's for the basic version, which has a 160-mile range.
Mm-hmm.
But you can get a battery pack that goes up to 300 miles in range.
Right.
And in fact, one of the things we think we'll probably do is have the 300-mile packs available for rent. So if you're just using your car
Please do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please do that. Because this car is unbelievably exciting, and I think the instinct is, much like other forms of technology, there's going to be the I want the everything package, and then there's going to be a lot of people who can't really afford the everything package.
Right.
They can barely get into the car as it is, but they're dying to get into this car.
Sure.
So that sure would be fantastic if they could rent that larger battery, if and when they ever needed it, because for a lot of people,
Yeah.
160 miles around town as their everyday car
Right.
is fantastic.
Right. It's 160. Average person drives 30 miles a day, so
Yeah.
160 miles is 5 times what the average person drives in a day.
Are all
Yeah.
3 batteries this quick charge of 45-minute capability?
Yeah. The car will have a standard 45-minute. All cars will come with the ability to charge in 45 minutes. Now, I should point out that the 45 minutes does require an off-board charger, so you won't be able to use the onboard charger to do the 45-minute charge. The onboard charger.
You have to pull over and
you
take the battery out?
No, you need to just go to a charging station that's a kind of an industrial strength power charging station, because that's a lot of power,
Right.
more than most houses are capable of delivering. But the onboard charger that's built into the car will be capable of recharging the car in about 3 to 4 hours.
So overnight, you plug the car in.
Yeah, no problem.
And is it going to be like my computer where I can overcharge it and then it's
No.
bad for the computer?
No,
I don't want to leave it plugged in overnight?
There's a lot of intelligence in the battery pack. It won't allow itself to be charged incorrectly.
Excellent. Will I get better service than AT&T than I do with my iPhone is a real question here. The computer on board,
Yeah.
but before I get to that, there's one thing that Wired magazine wrote a very, I thought, supportive article about the Model S. And then there's all sorts of debates going on in the comment section of that article.
Right.
And a lot of naysayers. As always, they line up like idiots.
Tesla seems to generate a bipolar response.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, but you know what? That's fantastic, though. I mean, if anything, it challenges you to rise above all questions and inquiries and be able to answer them all and be able to attribute the genius and expertise of your, design people and yourself. Because I do understand also that you've, as an engineer yourself, have really
Right.
been at the forefront of the design of.
Yeah, you're trying to think of the right title, but that's sort of probably a good description would be product architect. So at Tesla, we do have a chief technology officer, J.B. Straubel, who's been with the company from the beginning and
Yes.
really is the person most responsible for leading the technology of Tesla. He's a great guy. And also like to credit Franz von Holzhausen in terms of the design of the Model S.
Right.
And the way I look at it is I sort of work with them and the other members of the Tesla team to create a great product, because I think great companies are built on great products.
Yeah. Well, yes. Hell yes. Forgive me for reading this, but I don't want to miss this, and I was hoping I could put this to you. To address the "Why is the Model S still so expensive?" question, a wonderful article in Wired magazine written by Chuck Squatriglia, which I'm sure I'm destroying his name, I'm sorry. Very supportive of the design, not only the car, but the master plan in general of Tesla Motors to roll out the so-called more expensive models first, with the $109,000 Roadster, and then now the $49,000 up to 54,000, I think it is, Model S. Tons of comments posted. One reader, obviously an EV driver, hit on some wonderful points.
Sure.
I wanted your feedback on. That really sort of drove a point home that I don't think a lot of people are considering. And that is wildly ignored, I think. When, these people are considering the sticker price only, as opposed to the fuel and maintenance.
Yeah.
And when you own a car, you pay for more than just the initial purchase price. You also pay for fuel and maintenance. And it is these two very important, unavoidable truths that EV costs a minuscule of what the ICE, or internal combustion engine, costs. The EV motor has only one moving part on the Roadster and presumably the Model S, the only regular.
Yeah, this is true. Well, technically there's some gears, but yeah.
Right. The regular maintenance items really are brakes and tires?
Not even the brakes, actually, because regenerative braking means that your brake pads see very little wear.
I love this.
Yeah.
The EV's actual fuel costs, they've narrowed it down to 2 to 3 cents per mile.
Yeah,
that sound
that's about
familiar?
right. That's about right.
So if you keep your Model S for the average of 10-year, 100,000 mile lifespan, you replace your tires, brakes, which is not the case, for say $1,000 each time. Again, these numbers can vary. And pay up $3,000 for the fuel over this 100,000 miles, your $49,900 purchase price only increases to around $54,900. The IRS says driving a ICE, internal combustion engine, car costs 50.5 cents per mile, inclusive of fuel and maintenance. At that rate, over the lifespan, the same lifespan, a Ford Taurus with a sticker price of $25,000 increases over that lifespan to $75,500. $75,500. Theoretically, therefore, the ICE car with a sticker price of 0 would still cost more than the Model S after those 100,000 miles. I don't think people have done that math in terms of the initial investment. Oh my God, it's so much more than a Taurus.
Yeah, well, actually, I think perhaps the best way to address that question is not even to have people do the math, because we will have our car for lease. And so if you take our lease cost and the lease cost of a gasoline car, and you add in the cost of
ridiculous.
The cost of fuel and maintenance on the gasoline car, and the cost of electricity and maintenance on the electric car, then you have the savings from the beginning. There's no need to add this up over 5, 7 years or whatever. You can simply say, how much is transportation costing me every month? And you will have the savings from day one.
But I will shove people out of the way who want to lease so that I can get one.
Well, but to be clear,
I can buy one.
If you do that, in fact, we're going to put a calculator on our website, hopefully in the next week or two, so you can plug in and you can say, okay, well, what do you think the price of gasoline is going to be? And you can put in the price of gasoline, and what's your electricity cost? You can put in the cost of electricity, and then we'll say, well, what's the probable operating cost per month? And then how does that compare, and compare that to cars of different types.
It becomes pretty clear, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then it's pretty obvious that if you assume that gasoline is going to get back up above $4 a gallon, which I think that's a certainty. In fact, I think it's going to go way beyond that. And then you put in the cost of electricity, particularly if you have time of use meters, like in places like California, where you can get 7 cents a kilowatt hour. Then our car is comparable to a Ford Taurus.
Well, let's talk about what you need in your home to keep this car charged on a regular basis. What sort of setup do you need electrically?
You really don't need much of anything. You can, if you are only driving, say, 30 miles a day or something like that, you can actually charge it out of a regular 110-volt socket.
Seriously?
Literally plug it in like it's a hairdryer.
For overnight, in terms of your range is going to lower, though?
Well, a 110-volt supply will will recharge about 5 or 6 miles an hour. So if you're, say, driving 30 miles a day and you charge it for 6 hours, you've topped it up essentially. So that's certainly possible.
So if you want to unplug the toaster and plug in the car. Okay.
So it is workable, and we actually have many Roadster customers that operate their car on that basis.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and that comes along with the base price. And then if you want to do a faster charge, then the next step up would be a 240-volt, 40-amp circuit, which is comparable to a dryer. So it's like a dryer plug.
Wow.
So it doesn't cost very. That costs a couple $100 to install a dryer outlet in your garage. And again, that just operates off the onboard charger in the car. So you just plug it in, like it's a dryer or a range or something like that, and that'll charge a lot faster. That'll charge the car in 7 or 8 hours.
Full charge.
Full charge, yeah.
And the quick charge will be only available at these charging stations?
Yeah, the quick charge is we're talking about something which is it's a lot of power. I mean,
Yes.
For 45 minutes, you're talking about something which is on the order of a 60 kilowatt power source. There's very few houses that you'd break the master circuit on most houses.
It's a bad idea.
Yeah, and it's overkill and unnecessary for a house. But I do think a lot of businesses may choose to install that for their employees, and that where this will really come in handy is when you're going between cities. So there's 3 ways that we've addressed the range issue on the Model S. One is by offering a range of up to 300 miles.
Right.
And like I said, we're also hoping to be able to allow people to buy the 160-mile range car and then rent the 300-mile range pack as needed.
You'll give them a map of where these charging stations are along the route, so if they want to drive across country, you'll let them know where.
Yeah, in fact, you mentioned that the touchscreen, the car will be 3G connected to 3G wireless connected all the time. So you won't need a map. You can just ask the car, take me to the next charging station, and it'll give you a selection of locations.
If there's any way you could put in a phrasing that just at some point the car says, "Stop busting my balls," I just want to put that out there. Let's go to
actually we are going to offer. You know what?
Yes.
Ask and you shall receive.
Okay.
We are going to offer themes, so you can actually theme your because it's all just a big screen.
Right.
You have a 17-inch center console screen, and you've got a smaller sort of display screen on the front. You can theme your car. So if you just like you sort of theme your desktop or your cell phone.
Give it a little cynicism. Give it a little.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, absolutely.
Playful.
And there'll be and there'll be people that probably want to write applications.
Right.
That do various things. And this your center console is a full-fledged computer running Linux. So it's something where it'll have a browser. If you want to browse and search the web, do your email while not driving.
While not driving, while charging, if you want to go sit down.
It could do things like read out your email for you.
Yeah. No. Did you show any pictures of this monitor when we ran through? Okay. If you want to throw them back up now that we're talking about it, if you have that one isolated, because it is pretty astounding that whole part of it. And people go to the website Tesla Motors, they can do a little more research in terms of what you're offering in that monitor, because it is wildly extensive. If there's anything else in it that you do want to address.
Well, we are taking advantage of economies of scale from the computer business, which is a lot bigger than the car business in unit volume. You've got hundreds of millions of computers shipping every year, whereas you've got a much smaller number of cars shipping every year. So
now less than ever.
Right, absolutely. So by putting in 17-inch monitors in the computer business these days are dirt cheap. And so it's really not that expensive for us to do this.
Right. Well, what it is cutting edge, and that's one of the things that makes the car so unbelievably desirable. What about, they're asking here, Twitter.com, for the next generation of road vehicles, what will they be when the electric car have become obsolete? Wow, people are going on to the next generation beyond the electric car. I'm not sure that's for this discussion.
The electric car is a long-term solution.
Yeah. There's, as you were pointing out in terms of how to power the electricity, that's where we can diversify, be it water, be it solar power, be it wind.
Yeah.
I'm not sure wind is the correct word.
There may be, the only thing I could see as potentially being a change is, and this is speculative, is a switch from batteries to high energy density capacitors.
Right.
In fact, I originally came out to California to do a PhD at Stanford in the material science and physics of high energy density capacitors for use in electric cars. That's what initially brought me to Silicon Valley, and then ended up putting that on hold and started a couple of internet companies. But it was, so I think that's a possibility. I'm not sure whether success is one of the possible outcomes, but it's a possibility.
Any chance for a flux capacitor? Maori!
Well,
Mallory, where's the flux capacitor? Sorry, I did that on a dare.
I suppose you could call it a flux capacitor. Flux just means sort of flow.
Right.
Of anything, you know, you could flux it, energy flux, anything. So.
Ask Elon how we can help Tesla Motors get the federal loan. And also where the factory be. The factory be here in Los Angeles. I don't know if you want to get specifics about where in Los Angeles. Is it that the SpaceX where you have the...
Yeah, the Tesla design studio is inside the SpaceX rocket factory.
Right.
And the design center is in Southern California because the world's best automotive design talent is actually right here in Southern California.
You're welcome.
It's true.
Yeah.
And Franz von Holzhausen, our designer, head of design, was based here when he worked at Mazda before joining us. And there's just a really big talent pool. So, and rather than go rent a whole separate space, it was just easier to allocate some space in the SpaceX rocket factory for the Tesla design. It also made it obviously very convenient for me to work with Franz,
yes.
Who's a great guy to work with. We're very much on the same wavelength. It's great, actually. So, as far as helping on the DOE front, I actually think we're okay. Definitely any voice of support is great. Mentioning it to your congressman or senator.
That does help, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If they feel a groundswell, if they feel that there's a public demand.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to let your congressman and senator know that you think companies like Tesla should get a portion of the ATVM program. And I should mention, what we're asking for is really a tiny, we're only asking for about 1.5% of the ATVM program. The vast majority of it will go to GM, Ford, Chrysler. They'll get 98%.
1.5% you're asking for?
Yeah, we're asking for 1.5%. Right? I think it's not a big ask. And I think...
Can we get Barack on the phone? People? Tyler, Crude? What are you laughing about? Yeah, it doesn't seem unreasonable at all to be asking for the 1.5%.
I think we can probably put it to better use than GM.
Yes, well, you know what? I would love to have them in this room and watch that debate, quite frankly. SpaceX came first, and
yeah,
it is a thriving industry that only recently actually stepped up its game, or so it seems from what I'm reading. Do you want to share some of the latest news?
Well, SpaceX, we got to orbit last year,
right,
which is a fairly big deal. Our rocket is arguably the first completely privately developed rocket to reach orbit, although there's some dispute on that front. But it's unequivocally the first liquid-fueled privately developed rocket to reach orbit. And that's a tough thing. Most countries can't do that. So it's a.
And how many years did that take?
That was 6 years.
Yeah.
From start to reaching orbit. 6 years.
And so when the money is just evaporating as you're pouring all the time and energy in your life into this vision, how often people want to hear about the struggle? How often does the thought enter your mind? It's too much. There's other things I want to do with my life, because I have to assume this is all consuming for you.
Well, I spend a lot of time with my kids. There's really just sort of, I guess, 4 things that I do. There's SpaceX and Tesla, which take about roughly half of my business time each. Then there's my kids, and then I sleep. That's like the 4 things I do.
Right.
And often sleep I don't get a lot of sleep.
That
sometimes.
becomes the commodity, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was definitely difficult. The fourth quarter of last year was very difficult. Yeah, it was.
Well, it was very difficult
for everyone, I think.
Yeah, for everyone, until we found out, of course, that Britney Spears is back, and then it all sort of lightened our load a little bit.
Absolutely. There was a glimmer of hope.
Right. Well put. That's what I would have called it as well, a glimmer. So 6 years.
Yeah.
From the design and from the vision, and then last year your first complete orbit.
Yeah, absolutely. We came close on our second and third flights. We did reach space, but we did not reach orbital velocity in our second and third flights. And then our fourth flight we reached orbital velocity. And then we've got another flight coming up in about towards the end of this month, and that's going to deliver a satellite for Malaysia.
You have to take on some commercial cargo.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a wide variety of customers. Actually, NASA is our biggest customer,
right,
by far. But we have many other customers as well. Sweden is a customer, Malaysia, as I mentioned, Canada, and then we also have some purely commercial customers. We'll be launching a satellite for Avanti, which is a European broadcast satellite company, yeah. So
expound upon a little bit, if you can, with your relationship with NASA, because I think this is pretty fascinating, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, I love NASA. I want to say that. NASA is awesome.
Well, they believe in you, so I tend to like people I tend to agree with people who agree with me, so I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and NASA's actually been really supportive,
right.
And SpaceX would not have gotten as far as it did without NASA's help, so I want to acknowledge that. And in December of last year, NASA actually gave us the contract to be the replacement for the space shuttle as far as cargo is concerned. So the space shuttle retires at the end of next year, and then NASA does have a long-term plan for developing a launch vehicle and a spacecraft called the Ares Orion project, but that's intended to go back to the moon. So and that's only going to see flight probably around the 2016 timeframe.
Wow.
So there's kind of a gap of 5 or 6 years. But we still have a space station up there that we've got to service.
Right.
So what do we do during that gap? And that's why NASA took the unprecedented step of saying, okay, well, let's see what the private sector can do, and let's.
You stepped up.
Yeah, we did. And so NASA's felt confident enough to award. They actually did a competition, and there were 20 missions, and we got 12 of the 20. 8 of them were awarded to another company, Orbital Sciences, and then there was a third competitor, which was a joint venture of Boeing, Lockheed, and Align Tech Systems, which actually did not get any of the missions. So that was a big upset.
A huge upset.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't blame any of your engineers when that moment happened if they sort of rallied together and said, "Suck it," to those people.
Right, and so it was. See, I think we said suck.
I knew I could break you.
Boeing and Lockheed are fine companies.
Oh, of course, please. They're doing just fine without my little cynicism.
Yeah, no, it's. Yeah.
So you're well established now with your relationship with NASA. They're clearly depending on you. You've won this competition.
They really are depending on us,
yes.
And so it's actually quite a big responsibility, which we take very seriously. And so we're working very hard to make sure we don't let them down. Yeah,
and you were just in Washington just before the Model S announcement, right? About well, tell us what you were.
Well, I'm in Washington quite a lot because
right.
there's a lot of interests there, both for SpaceX and Tesla.
Right. And there was a bit of an announcement right before the March 26th. You were there. I was reading something where you had to address a group.
Maybe it was the satellite. There's a big satellite conference in D.C. every year. Yeah. So I gave a keynote there.
Right.
And that was just basically giving people an update on where SpaceX is and what progress we're making. And
that's what I was reading about. Yeah.
Just basically telling people where we are, and we're expecting to launch our big rocket, the Falcon 9, and with the Dragon spacecraft later this year.
Right. I think you were discussing the Falcon 9.
Right. The vehicles we've launched to date are the Falcon 1, which is a much smaller vehicle.
Yes.
So Falcon 9 is a very big vehicle. In fact, it's going to be the most powerful single-core vehicle in the U.S. fleet. By single-core, I mean without using side boosters. And then the Falcon 9 Heavy, which is the Falcon 9 with side boosters, will actually be the most highest payload-capable vehicle in the world. And
when did you share that piece of news? Was that something that was?
That's actually, it's been on our website for a while, though. I'm not sure people believed we'd actually do it.
Yeah. I'm sure there were people waiting for that announcement and also now waiting for the failure. You must have a lot of the surrounding people. I mean, people who are competitive with you, I speak of, who part of them wants you to succeed because it opens up opportunities for them.
Right.
But at the same time, if it's anything at all like the business of show, there's such competition that even those who succeed feel this sense of there isn't enough to go around. And if you succeed, it means I won't. Is there more of a camaraderie from your standpoint?
Well, it depends on who you're talking about. So there's some companies where we are a great enabler because we're fundamentally, SpaceX is in the transportation business. If transportation improves, then those who use transportation will find that their business has improved. Just as when they finished the transcontinental railway in the early days of early history of the United States, it was a huge boon to businesses in the East Coast, businesses in people could travel back and forth, goods could transfer a lot easier. So it was really helpful to everyone except probably the stagecoach companies. Right. They didn't like it that much.
No, they didn't.
So I think there's more of the space business that wants us to succeed than doesn't want us to succeed.
So are you feeling more scrutiny about the Model S in terms of competitiveness? Because here's just based on the documentary, the killing of the electric car. This has happened before. The name itself, Tesla, comes from someone who was obviously squashed by the bigger electric companies.
Yeah, Nikola Tesla did pretty well for most of his life, although he went kind of bonkers at the end. Hopefully that doesn't happen to me.
Yes, we're all pulling for that. But I mean in terms of who got credit for what. That seemed to be the struggle in terms of the memory. If you ask your average American on the street what they know about Nikola, it says you're not going to get a lot of...
Yeah, Edison, I think in the popular mindset, Tesla gets less notice than Edison. In science, in the sort of scientific world, Tesla gets more attention and more credit than Edison.
Yeah.
And they both, I think they're both really great men and did amazing things. And the little bit of rivalry is probably a good thing.
It's a great thing.
So it's I think that they're both great. We thought we'd recognize Tesla in naming the car company better than naming it the Elon car company or something like that.
I'm proud of you for letting that go. I'm sure it crossed your mind at some point. All right. How many people have signed up already, officially signed up, and are waiting delivery on the Model S?
I don't know the exact number today, but we're well over 500.
Over 500.
And
how do I become the next one?
Oh, just go to the website. You can just click the buy.
But I've got you right here. Are there forms that we could fill out right now?
Literally, you can...
How easy is it? So you go to the website and you follow the simple instructions, clicking yes, me, I want one.
As someone who did PayPal, you can imagine that I have a big focus on making things really easy.
Yes, nice job
and online. Thanks.
Yes.
So we spend a lot of time at PayPal trying to make things super easy. And actually, if somebody goes to the Tesla Motors, just go to teslamotors.com, click on the Buy tab. You should be able to put down a reservation for a Model S in under 5 minutes.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, and it's a $5,000 reservation, which is refundable. And I'm personally standing behind the reservation payments. So if anyone is concerned about us going out of business, the only thing you should worry about is if I get hit by a bus. And I'm trying to cover that one as well by getting some key man insurance in place. So if I do get hit by a bus,
really, there's the bus factor. That's still an opportunity.
Or something,
Because I was just thinking,
not a lot of buses in LA. Fortunately, I'm safe on that front.
500 people times $5,000. You should be able to cover that fairly easy.
Yeah, it's not going to. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think people's deposit. Well, we can't call it a deposit for legal reasons, but people's reservation payment is. I think is safe.
But I'm glad we were able to uncover the bus factor. This is very important, I think, to a lot of customers. They need to know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's still. I mean, there's a tiny bit of risk.
Your kryptonite, apparently, is the bus.
Right. Well, so there's always a tiny bit of risk, and the tiny bit of risk would be if Tesla goes out of business, and I lose all of my assets, and don't die.
And don't die.
And don't die.
There's the rub.
And that's okay. And for the rest of my life, I'm never able to build up my assets to the point where people can be repaid. That would be the circumstance under which people would lose their money.
You know what? I'm glad you did the math on that, because I'm sure a lot of people have also. And well,
So if the bus does hit me, it needs to kill me, not partially paralyze me or something.
for those of you who currently call bus driving your profession, do us all a favor and stay the hell away from this man. If at all possible, hit the dog, if I may. Mr. Musk, I cannot thank you enough for sharing as much as you have. I would love to have you on again in terms of watching the progress of SpaceX as well as Tesla, because I am wildly curious, and I know an awful lot of people are as well, that are just starting to discover what's been going on now in your life for the last 6 years in the case of SpaceX, in the last Roadster rather, and
Right.
And now the last couple of years with the Model S, and
Yeah.
waiting with bated breath to see where this company is going, and praying with you and for you that it succeeds beyond your dreams.
Thanks. Actually, you know what? You haven't touched on any personal stuff, which is fine. But you know,
I didn't want to, but I'm happy to go there. What would you like to talk about?
Well, there is a common misperception which does sort of drive me crazy a little bit.
Okay.
You know, I sort of my wife and I are getting, or my ex-wife and I are getting divorced, and we, well, I
Been there?
Yeah. So
Sorry.
the divorce filing took place in sort of June of last year, and so it takes a while for these things to get done.
Boy, does it.
Yeah, and although my ex-wife, to her credit, made it clear in her blog that the marriage was over for reasons that had nothing to do with anyone else. In fact, she wanted to get divorced at least as much as I did, if not more.
That takes a little stress and guilt away, sure.
Right.
Nice.
There've been a few articles which have said that I left my wife and 5 kids for someone else.
I'm glad you brought this up. I wasn't about to go there, but
Well,
for God's sakes, let's clear a little air here.
I think, yeah, you know.
That would be very frustrating to me as well if that was in press releases and articles written about me when I was trying to change the face of the automobile business. But yeah, let's talk about it.
Well, it's just,
Whatever you'd like to share.
If I read that about someone, I would think, what a dick.
All right.
And that would be true. I mean, if it were true, but actually it's not, because I would never leave my kids. In fact, I see them 5 days a week.
They keep you from sleeping. We talked about that before. Yes.
Yeah. So.
What are the age range of these 5 children of yours?
Well, the twins are turning 5, and the triplets are 2.5.
Wow, twins and triplets.
Yeah.
That makes the 5. Wow. Well, this.
So anyway, it's
Yes,
just a point of clarification. There was an article, I think, you know, there've been a few articles where that's sort of been mentioned as an offhand comment. In fact, they weren't even, they were positive articles. They just mentioned it sort of off the cuff. And they were corrected in the online version. But you know, it's difficult to sometimes correct these perceptions. On the surface of it may seem that's you know, that I left my wife for someone else, but I didn't. And
Well, this is the problem that comes with the limelight, you see. You've gone beyond your profession and your expertise and your business life, and you're now being scrutinized for your personal life. And I do know a great deal about that from, of course, the business that I chose many years ago.
Right.
And it's never fair, it's never balanced, and it's always about selling an article or a paper or a magazine. And whatever it takes to throw you under that bus, if we may go back to that unfortunate spot, they will do it. And I am more than happy to offer you this forum to clear any air in regards to this at any time, because a lot of times, quite frankly, people in show business, they're sort of taught to stay away from it. You know what, don't, just leave it. They're going to write whatever they want to write. And I think that it's pretty damn courageous to sit here and say, you know what, this is what's being said about me and I don't appreciate it.
yeah,
So I commend you for that.
Well, I think it's
And
just
thank
to
you,
correct
quite
that. I mean, it's
frankly.
not. I'm certainly, you know, not someone who is. I mean, I'm no saint, but
I'll say. Well, I didn't want to say.
But I generally try to do the right thing, and you know, so and it's not like, you know, like I said, if people actually were to say, go look at my ex-wife's blog or something, they'd know, okay, that the marriage came to an end because
Do a little
we
more
sort of
research.
grew apart and
Yeah.
it just wasn't working, and we're making each other unhappy. So, but there people don't always know to do that, and
No.
and so anyway, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for sharing all of that. I really genuinely appreciate it, and I think the people watching appreciate it as much. The whole idea of this show was to not just be an infomercial about a film or a project or the design of an electric car. It was really about getting to know the people behind their work and their lives and what it takes in some cases to make history. And so on that level, I thank you very much.
All right, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Elon Musk, and I want to not only thank him, but my first guest, Jason Antoon. This has been a remarkable day and evening for me and for this show on many levels. And I want to take the opportunity this time, unlike the previous times, of thanking my crew, because for some reason we're wrapping up all the equipment after the show, and the first thing that crosses my mind is I didn't thank everyone. So Jason Calacanis, thanks for nothing. Let's start there. Then we go over to Tyler and Crude and Jamie and Jason McIntyre and Kate Shorter and Professor Chen, I like to call him. And where's Jacob? Is he out there crawling around somewhere? You're not getting any credit. I'm not thanking you. And Gypsy Kinnear from across the country lines into Canada, and Josh, who he sent here today to help out. And I want to thank all of you who are insisted on watching us live and contributed. I did not put you on the spot to play the Larry King game. I'm not sure I should let you slide. Did you contemplate that at all?
I'm not 100% sure how one plays the Larry King game.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to insist that you come back with a Larry King game prepared.
Okay.
I'm going to let you off the hook on
All right.
this one because I feel like I've more than pressed my luck with your appearance here, and I thank you for your time. I sincerely do.
All right, you're welcome.
Okay, so thanks to everyone involved, and thank you for watching, and please join us again, my guest, next week on Easter Sunday. He's called Yid Vicious, the pit bull of stand-up comedy, Bobby Slayton. I got myself a funny Jew for Easter. That's what I did. I also got the star of an amazing documentary called Super Jaime, a great, great talent, Mr. Doug Benson. We just lined up a few other new guests. I'm very excited. If you're a fan of the runaway hit Mad Men, the Golden Globe winning star of that show, John Hamm, has agreed to join us. It'll either be the 19th or the 26th, but on the 19th for certain, the Academy Award winning writer of The Usual Suspects. Not a bad film, so I've been told. Felicia Day, the beginning of May, those of you who enjoy the Guild online and everything that it's becoming there beyond. A lot of great other people who have said yes, and I'll be making more announcements. Thank you for all your involvement and help. Don't forget our contest. We skipped 3 degrees of Kevin Pollak. We'll get back to that next week. And don't forget your suggestions for the Larry King game. And thank you for all your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to them. And I'll see you next week. Okay.